Good morning, and thank you very much for those kind words, Dr. Nicholas. It's a real treat to be back here, and I'd like to add my own congratulations to the graduates and their families for this memorable day. This is terrific. You know, what I wanted to share with you today is the answers that I have given over these 40 years since I graduated from Florida Tech to the question that I got more often than not, which was, what does it take for me to be successful? You know, what's the secret? What's the trick for me to be the best that I can be, for me to reach my full potential? So I wanted to share with you those observations that I have. Well, what are the qualities that are associated with people that really fulfill their potential and be the best that they can be? I preface this by saying that none of this is academically proven, nothing of this is scientific, but these are my honest, sincere observations of what are those characteristics that I think allow people to be the best that they can be. So here we go. The first one is knowledge. Regardless of what you choose to do after you graduate, regardless of your field of expertise, job one is always to know that area like the palm of your hand. Whatever your responsibility is going to be, no one in that organization, in that institution, should know your area of responsibility as much as you do. Whether it's running a factory, whether it's running a sales district, whether it's running a lab or a research program, that in-depth knowledge is job one. And the difference between being an amateur and a professional is that depth of mastery. So my only advice would be, job one is when you get to your new, whatever you're going to do with your professional life, really commit yourself to go in depth and understand, not just superficially, but the drivers of why things are the way they are, and have that inside knowledge. Within that, one of the things that I learned over the years is that we as human beings, myself included, we always feel that there's areas where we have a lot of strengths and some areas where we don't feel as confident, that we limp a little bit on. And human nature tends to be for us to kind of sweep those weaknesses under the rug. But I learned over the years to try to actually embrace your weakness. Whatever you feel like you're not quite as comfortable about, tackle it head on and transform it into a strength as you can through practice, through dedication. So again, number one, knowledge. There's no substitute for it. The second point that I think is critical is an ability to envision a better end state, to make things better. So again, I ask you, when you start in your role, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of responsibilities that you're going to be tasked with. And of course, job one is execute well, comply, do a fine job, do what's expected of you. But I think people that really fulfill their potential, they assume the personal responsibility to say, okay, I got it, I have my bearings here, I'm doing my job well, but what's going to be my personal legacy? How am I going to make this place better than when I found it when I got here? In what ways do I want that organization, that group that I'm working with, accountable for, to be in a better place than when I got here? And really commit yourself to that, leaving that footprint. And regardless, as you move on from role to role and assignment to assignment, armed with that knowledge, really go beyond what's expected of you and take the lead to figure out how to make things better and leave an end state better. The third quality that I think is really important is communication. But by that I mean not only to be able to communicate orally and in writing, persuasively and in a compelling way, in an articulate way. But equally important, it's important to have the humility to know that you don't have all the answers. and therefore be a very good listener as well. One thing I've learned over the years is that the best ideas, those that really change the game and create legacies that endure in time, the best ideas don't necessarily reside only in the minds of one person, let alone the leader of that group. But it resides in small pieces in the minds of everyone you work with. Because everyone brings different experiences, different skills that are unique. So the job of a leader, the job of a professional, is to create a culture of dialogue where all these ideas come forward and all these ideas, the pieces from everybody's thoughts come up and collide. And that's when magic happens. That's when you have the alchemy of ideas that change things. And then tend then to be very successful because everyone contributed. Everyone feels they own this vision that you're taking forward, not just the leadership does or a handful of people do. So again, communication, but balancing humility and listening with being able to share your ideas in a way that creates excitement and enthusiasm, but then balance that with being a good listener. And then the fourth and last thought that I have for you is that people that fulfill their potential, they are inspirational to others. They are inspirational leaders. Now, inspirational leadership is a very broad topic. What does it mean? So I'll share with you my view of what inspirational leadership really represents. And that is, you will see in your journey that you're going to meet a number of people that you're going to be inspired by, as I'm sure you have by some of the terrific faculty of this great institution. And what inspiration means to me anyways is you see human qualities in others that you admire, that you're inspired by, and you hope to then emulate yourself as you go on. It's about bringing the best out in other people and do it so with authenticity and genuinely. So what are some of those human qualities that have been inspirational to me? So I'll give you a few examples. First one is courage. I'm inspired by people that are courageous. And when I talk about courage, I don't just talk about being physically brave to deal with challenges and compete, but also to have the courage to say what you mean and mean what you say, even when it's sometimes difficult. To really speak your mind with conviction, even if your ideas may not be the most popular. To face reality, to face the issues as they are, not as you wish them to be, not look at things with rosy glasses. I've seen many people that have inspired me because of their character and their willingness to really stand their ground, speak their mind, and face their weaknesses, face their opportunities, and tackle them head on. So that's one characteristic that has inspired me. Another one is selflessness. It's a very competitive world out there. And as you know, and when you get into your jobs, you're going to be not only evaluated in the absolute, but relative to your peers and your colleagues. So it's human nature for people to, as they take tasks on and they commit to challenges, to worry about taking credit. And that's natural, that's understandable. But I'm inspired by people that do things selflessly when there's nothing in it for them. They don't seek credit, and there's really no obvious return for them to do that. But what they do is they help others. And when you do things, when there's nothing that you expect in return, then people want to follow you, people want to be around you. I'll tell you a story about a television series that was back in the 80s when I was studying here, and none of you existed, the graduates I'm speaking to. It was called Stingray. So it was a TV episode that started with a newspaper ad that said "Need help?" ? And there was a phone number. And then there was the protagonist, the hero of the show, was a good-looking guy dressed in a leather jacket, drove a black sports car. It was called Stingray. So every episode, he would go up to the newspaper, somebody would call, speak to him, and he would go see that person and say, "What can I do to help you?" And this person would describe whatever issue was afflicting them at the time. And then the rest of the episode, he went on about fixing that problem for the person. And to do so, he tapped into this network of doctors, physicians, law enforcement, just professionals in different walks of life. And little by little, it fixed the person's problem. And invariably, at the end of the show, the person would come to Stingray and say, "I'm so grateful. How can I pay you in return?" He says, "You don't have to pay. But I hope that someday, if I need your help and call you, that you would be willing to help me too." And of course, that whole network of people that he used to resolve his problems were people that he had once helped. So that's what I leave with you is go above and beyond what's expected. Don't worry too much about taking credit. And then when you see people that need help and you see opportunities for you to add value, even if it's beyond your scope, do it without expecting anything in return. And that selflessness will pay back many times over. I'm inspired by people that are original thinkers, people that think different. Again, I expect that when you start working, regardless of the size of the job at the organization where you work in the industry, you're going to see that there's going to be a lot of things that are already in motion when you jump in. There's processes, there's systems, there's ways of doing things, there's lore, there's history. And so, job one, of course, our instincts are to jump in, conform, do a good job. But for those organizations to really be the best they can be, they need original thinking. Top to bottom, not only from the leaders, but from the young people in the organization, especially from the young people in the organization. So I'm inspired by people that you ask, this is the task at hand, and they say, okay, I understand it. But they come back and say, yeah, we can do that, but here's another question that I think we should ask ourselves, and here's something that I think we should do. So that original spark is critically important. But I think, unfortunately, you lose that along the way in your life. I'll tell you a story about a great book that I recommend if you have a chance. It's not that long a story. But it's called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. Now, I know it sounds a little crazy, but bear with me. This was written by a gentleman who was the creative director for Hallmark cards, the greeting card company. And it's all about ideation, creation, and design. But he talks about that one of the hobbies that he has was to be a sculptor. And so he donated his time to his children's school. And he would once a month get together with people in school and have students sit around him while he was working on a certain piece and just ask questions and have a dialogue. And he went with kids that were in primary school all the way to high school. And one of the questions he asked all the time was, how many of you were geniuses? And what he said in the book is, invariably, the kindergarten and first grade and second graders, they all said, I'm a genius. But the older the groups went, fewer and fewer hands went up. So what happens is when you join big institutions or companies or whatever you choose to do, there's a risk that because of so much momentum that already exists before you get there, that you may lose that spark, that originality, that edge that you had as a child, and I'm sure I can see it, you have it here in your eyes. So don't lose that. It's not being a contrarian for being a contrarian's sake, but think originally and be committed to doing that. And then another quality that has inspired me and over the years are people that are emotional intelligent. Now, intelligence tends to be mostly viewed as analytical thinking and strategic thinking and problem solving, etc. But I think emotional intelligence is really as important a human quality from an intellect standpoint than any other. And it's about, again, bringing the best out in other people. I was reminded of a story of a very famous baseball coach. His name was Joe Torre. Some of you may remember him from the Yankees in St. Louis. He has by far the best track record of any baseball team in history as a coach. And there was a Fortune magazine article back, again, in the 80s that asked him, so tell us, what is it that allows you to be so successful for so long? And he said, I'd like to prioritize emotional intelligence. So that's, what do you mean by that? Well, he said, let me give you an example. When my team goes into a slump and we start losing a few games and more, what do? I get very calm, I get very quiet, I get very close to them. And I remind them of their previous successes. I give the ball to the pitcher, the bat to the batter, and I just try to infuse confidence in them and build them up. And then little by little, they always come back and they start winning and they go on these runs. What do I do when they win? I tighten the screw. I demand more of them. I said, this is not good enough. You can do better. And he called that managing against the cycle. And I think what I learned over the years is, many times leaders tend to do the opposite. So when things go a little off the rails or they're shaky, there's a lot of swarming and inspection. But this is when people need most of your support. And again, I've been inspired by people that learned when to be challenging, when to demand things, and when to be supported. So these are 4 qualities that I just referred to that have inspired me: courage, selflessness, original thinking, emotional intelligence. But I'd ask you, forget about all this. And what I would ask you to do is make your own list of what are the qualities that you've seen over the years that have really inspired you and that you feel you want to embody as you go forward. Your list is what matters. Hopefully some of these points resonate with you, but that's not the key here. The key is, what is it that you believe has inspired you? And then I would just say, embrace that. So this is what I had to share. In summary, it's all about knowledge, knowing things like the palm of your hand, communication that balances persuasiveness with humility and listening. It's about envisioning, really leaving a legacy of things the way they could be better. And above all, it's about being inspirational to others. I cannot believe that I graduated 4 years ago. I can see myself, right in your faces here. And I know that this is a great school with teachers that embody a lot of the things I'm talking about here. And that, really made me not only prepared to compete professionally, but made me a much better person than I was before I walked in here. So I wish you all the success in the world, and I hope this is something that you can carry with you. Thank you.